And do we have people waiting in the room? She's in this room also.
I'm always checking.
Oh, you're totally wired. It's okay. Good. So are we set then? Chris?
Yeah, I think we're good to go.
Okay, well, we'll hope for a smooth functioning meeting this time. Call the meeting to order. Liz, would you please call the roll?
Janine Prod, not here yet. Marty Mayo, not here this time. Lisa Pappas here, Tim Redmond,
Yes.
John Reiser, not here this time. Will Weber.
Here.
Barry, and Liz Wiseman is here. Barry Lonick is here, and Christian.
Okay, if people have a chance to look at the agenda. We've had a suggestion that we allow Chris Bailey to jump up to what, do you think shortly after approval of the minutes or even right now?
Let's approve the.
Approve the
agenda
minutes
and,
first?
Revise the agenda
Yeah,
to move Chris to first. And then go ahead and approve the minutes. And
okay,
then-
let's do that. So without further ado and without formality, I think Chris disappears. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes, approve the agenda
So moved,
As modified.
as modified?
as
right?
modified.
And I will support that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Chris, can you hear us?
No, he's back. He's in the back.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Now we do. the-
All right, we're gonna just now approve the minutes. All right, so we have the minutes. They've been slightly modified based on Janine's
Let me
suggestion.
read.
Oh, yeah, look on that one up.
There she is. I'm gonna read your modification to the minutes, okay? The revision. So Janine, has corrected the minutes to read, under the Environmental Sustainability Task Force, LaPride and others are working and reviewing the township's sustainability goals and action with those of the Michigan Green Communities Challenge.
Yes.
And so we are gonna substitute that language for what was in there that went out to you all. As a correction. And so with that correction, those are the minutes that we are looking
All right, and will there be more to say about that in this meeting, or is that just, okay, all right, good. So with the suggested approval, were there any other changes? Have motion to approve the minutes?
Yeah, so
at. Tim,
Okay, second, all in favor? Aye.
who's the second?
I thought I heard Lisa say second.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, minutes have been approved from our last meeting. Now, Chris, would you give us a sense of where we are with the Zoom arrangements?
So, which, I mean, there's a couple issues from last time, with the Zoom link and then the loss of the camera function, which,
Well, I guess it isn't so much that we have to go back and figure out what went wrong, but I guess it's assurance that it's gonna be a little easier to
Oh,
perform
right.
now.
so what the problem I believe is last time, you may or may not have noticed, but the power around here is not the best. And so we've had a lot of power spikes. There's actually a transformer that blew up not too long ago, which is right around the time of this incident. The day of the incident, I was standing in the front office and I noticed the lights went down and off. And because of the power issues here, a lot of issues I've seen throughout the building with computers and such. They're issues that I attribute to having the brownouts and power spikes because our power here isn't the best. It's not a constant. It can go up and down and that causes issue with electronics. And so I discovered with that, we've had 3 incidences, 2 where the mics dropped out and 1 where the camera dropped out. And to get that camera back up, I had to remove the power to one of the pieces of equipment and plug it back in to get it to reset itself. So that's what I believe caused the incident last time is just these power drops, spikes that are just messing with the equipment. To address the issue, we're getting special, well, it has to be approved first, but Joyce is back, but battery units are gonna do power conditioning, so even though the power may come in spiking up and down, the units are going to condition the power, so it's just a constant steady flow out, so it doesn't damage the equipment. There's the equipment in the car, but there's also equipment in the back room and another piece of equipment on the sidewall as well that controls all this, not to mention the mics and the cameras. It's a complicated setup. And it is, it's gonna suffer the effects of those power spikes. So that's what we're doing to address the issues. We've also put, if you look behind the cart, there's lots of cable. We've attached part of it to the wall so it can't pull if the cart's moved too far. And we're trying to loop, we've got a hook on the wall so we can loop the excess cable up there so it doesn't get damaged. And I've checked all the connections and I replaced some other cables in the cart to make sure everything's new and tight.
So it sounds like it's still the process of remediation here and with the
It is.
power.
Once I get the power units and get those in place, hopefully we stop seeing weird issues. But talking with the vendors who built the system, talking about the power, it's kind of what we've come to at this point in time is the source of the issue is just our bad power in this area.
It sounds like pretty important for the whole township to have a more reliable source of power then, not just for the
We're
one
close.
Zoom.
We were closed for several days last July after those storms because of the power issues around here. We have to I can't remember how much Brandon's spending, but it's quite a bit of money to replace our backup generator because it's not reliable. So yes, the power around here does cause a lot of issues. I talked to my vendor who's selling me all the IT equipment. One of the techs who worked on this, they're all in the area and they're all like, yeah, the power around here is awful. So it's,
Okay, well, we'll hope we have fewer problems like this in the future then.
yeah, me too. Yeah, the other week, we lost power over the weekend. So the weekend the transformer blew and several of the computers here, it took me a long time to bring them back up because it just messes with things. So,
And you do have this other larger task you're working on, right?
well,
So.
I have lots of things, but yeah.
Yeah.
But this is our public facing, system, so it's
Right.
highly critical to make it function smoothly.
All right, any questions for Chris Bailey regarding the situation and where we are?
Bill, could you just clarify in terms of the responsibility of the commission to be, do we have any responsibility in terms of opening up the Zoom and monitoring? Is that Chris's role or how does that work just from a
So
personnel perspective?
what happens is we have the Zoom accounts. A couple of the accounts have what's called a webinar feature, and then there's other standard accounts. For example, Chris has a standard account, John has a standard account. Barry Will has a standard account. I don't know, it has Barry's name, but it seems to go to Will. Anyways, we set up the webinars and then we assign other standard accounts to run it. There's a difference between how webinars function and just a standard Zoom meeting. So what I'm doing right now is trying to simplify all this and make the process more understandable for people. For example, your last LPC meeting had no Zoom link because the meeting series ended at the end of 2023. And that's why that last meeting was funky, because I didn't discover that issue until about 2 hours before your meeting started. So I got to get a better process in place for every committee to set up the meeting and get things a little bit more centralized. So there's more people can run the meetings and we're sure all the meetings are set up. So to answer your question, we set up the meetings our end, but then we assign control of the meetings to people who are on the committee. Every committee has at least one person who can do it, and we usually assign. Do you know who Christy is? Anyway, Christy has an account, or myself has an account that can do the webinars, and so we'll set those up, and we'll always add extra people. Like if I set up a meeting, I'll add myself. I'll add Christy as a backup. Depending who's in the meeting, I'll add other people who have accounts as backup. So they could have 5 different backups potentially. This meeting probably has set up by Christy, but I can run it. Chris Chang can run it. John can run it. whichever one of you is controlling the account can run it. So, you know, I mean, there we got 4 people. So we're trying to make sure going forward that there's several people who can run the meeting if, you know, John can't make it in, you're not left,
Will all those designees have host privileges then to be able to?
yes, so that's is, we assign them as alternative hosts, so they can do everything. But in order to get that alternative host, you have to have a Zoom account. You can't have a free account, you have a paid account. So it is limited. I can't just give anyone, well, I could, but we'd have to pay for it.
All right. You sent out an email, excuse me, you sent out an email with a whole long list of our meetings and
Yes,
presumably the link will be valid for all of those meetings. And the
Yep.
meetings have now been corrected to be Thursday and not Tuesday. Is that correct?
yes, I sent out the original one, then a few minutes later, I realized I selected Tuesday, not Thursday, and corrected all that and added this one. So it'll be the same link with the same meeting ID each time.
And will it be the same 4 people or so every time?
Every time, yep.
Count on, so if
Yeah,
one
unless,
person isn't here,
yeah.
Chris can do it or.
Unless the committee makeup should change, somebody, you know, leaves or, you know, whatever, yeah. It will, if something changes, we'll add the new person, but yeah, everyone. We set up one meeting and then just schedule it, so it's the same settings every single time. And then as we need to adjust settings, we can go in there and edit every single occurrence.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the
Any
clarification.
Questions for
Yeah.
Chris?
I think it's right that we can't go forward with the meeting if the system's on fritz, if the public can't participate, right? Is that right?
Well, it's just, I mean, how many people are remote right now?
Just one.
So, I mean, my opinion would be, you know, if the system is on the fritz, it's nice to be able to let people participate remotely, but, I don't think that it would having it not work would affect you guys from running the meeting, because you're all here and no one here, who has business is sitting right here, ready to go.
Right, so I guess question becomes a legal one. Do we have a statutory responsibility to offer the Zoom?
So I was talking with the lawyers about recordings, whether or not we're obliged to keep them up there or not. And according to our lawyers, we have no legal obligation to actually provide the recordings to people. We have no obligation to edit it. We have no obligation to take them down if they are up there. So that may also apply to a Zoom meeting as well, actually broadcasting it. I don't know if we have any legal obligation, but I'd also have to get clarification from our township lawyers. I can tell you with the recordings, we have no legal obligation to put them out there or take them down or edit them.
Well, I guess the question is then, is it a legal record or not?
I'm not sure. We'd have to ask lawyers if we need to record it as a legal record or not, but we do have the minutes from the meeting, so.
Can we get clarification on that?
Yeah, I'll ask lawyers about that.
I mean, the township board, we passed a policy, we wanna have things as open as we can,
Yep.
online. So, you know, last meeting was a fluke, that shouldn't happen again. We got the right IDs, let's just move on and, you know, have our meetings in person and on Zoom, and then things should be okay.
Right,
It sounds as if this is not gonna be a problem unless people participate if they can't make it to this building. They have a Zoom, but usually this isn't gonna happen.
right, hopefully not. All right. Yeah, all right. Thank you, Chris, for the clarification, and keep us posted if there's profound changes and.
Oh, of course.
We do it, okay.
Yeah, this is the biggest pain I got around here. I think it's the Zoom system at this point in time.
Which this
All right.
light stage of thing shouldn't be.
Okay, then we'll proceed on to public comments. First of all, for those of you here in the audience, welcome. Thank you for coming. Anybody like to start? Yes,
Just real quick, Terry Murdy, 1222 Shady Oaks Drive. 30+ year resident, actively getting involved in the last couple of years. I'm running for clerk. So you'll hear and see that, and I am here to listen and learn. So very interested in what you've been doing, reading some of your past work, really good work, and just here to listen and learn.
oh,
Nothing more.
thank you. Oh, Kathleen?
Now I'm compelled.
Good afternoon, Kathleen Brandt, Scioto resident. I wasn't gonna speak until I heard that. I also am running for office. You may have seen, I'm running for trustee. I have been actively involved in the township for the past 3 years. I attend almost all of the meetings for the board, the planning commission, and the subcommittees. So I have a good handle on what's going on in the township. If you have seen me in other meetings, you will hear that I have a very strong concern for how the township spends money, and how we control that, and internal controls, as well as all the things that you folks are doing. As I've mentioned here, I live in a mature oak and hickory forest, which I'm replanting some things. So, now you know. Thanks.
Thank you. Please.
My name is Terry Ward. I live in South Township. Basically here to just voice my concern about the landfill that's being established down at the Honeybee U-Pick. I think everyone was pretty excited when when we found out that was going to be preserved, but I don't think we knew that it was going to be a dumping ground, and it's become quite an eyesore. And just concerned about that. There's trucks and trailers in and out all day long. There's no one there to monitor what's being dumped. There was a pile of building supplies, actually a couple pile of building supplies that has been removed, but just concerned of the looks of that. It looks horrible. No one really is real clear about what it's going to be used for. And I know in the last meeting, it was stated that you guys were gonna monitor it. And I'm just questioning, who's monitoring it? What are we monitoring it for? And how long are we going to monitor it? Until it's so full that we can't do anything? So that's my concern.
Just question, have you seen trucks coming and going in the last week or
Yes.
2 weeks?
Yes,
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
absolutely.
Yes. I've been out there and we're told it's hugelkultur or a way of kind of refurbishing the land through the mounds of the dirt, through the logs and then the chips and then the dirt, and then it breaks down over time and enhances the soil. And at some point, when does it become a dumping ground versus when is it a legitimate agricultural use? And I know that our ordinance officer looked into that, and I drove by there a few weeks ago, and I'm curious, how frequent are the trucks and how tall are the piles currently approximately?
They're tall.
I know, like,
And the
6
frequency of the
foot, 20
trucks,
foot?
there's no time set. They're just in and out all the time. I mean,
Multiple daily.
yeah, yeah, it's just it's just an open gate and people are dumping things. If it's a legitimate farming process, I did a little research on, I don't even know what it's called, yeah. And I get it. I've never seen it done before, but if that's the case, when is that going to start? Because all I see is big piles of logs and chips and
Near the
it
barn.
also was, somebody made the comment, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about establishing tree lines and things, making borders with it. Well, now, is it a farming process or are we making borders with it?
Well, I can tell you some of what I know. I know the people who own Honeybee Farm out there and I know their other farm, which is the Tantre Farm out toward Bryce Lake. And it's a very successful food growing operation, not field crops, but vegetables. They do a good job and they do it very environmentally sensitively, and they've done a lot for the region in general in terms of training younger people how to farm and how to grow vegetables. And so I have a lot of respect, just without the whole hugelkultur thing. I have a lot of respect for what they do. But I understand that, it's unsightly now. It will become less and less unsightly as the piles sink. There's been just a ton of waste wood in the county in general because of what DTE is doing and the storms that we've had. And Richard Andres, the owner, along with his wife, said, well, why don't I, use this hugelkultur idea and take in a lot of this wood. There are big piles near the barn, yeah. There's a big pile of sawdust that he's gradually, I went out there last week to take a look. There's nobody around. I couldn't talk to him, but I talked to Richard for a while, a few weeks ago. And, the idea is to start with the logs and brush and so on the ground. And then you gradually, fill in the top with sawdust or wood chips, and that helps to break it down. And the rows of those piles, rows of piles, I don't know what else to call them, but they hold water, and I, from what I could see, he's doing a good job of, creating more and more order out of what he's doing there, because there's that long north-south row of piles, you might call it. And then there's a east-west one coming off of that, and the old fence rows. That's the idea, is the fence rows used to attract moisture and keep it, from plowed fields generally need the moisture. So without saying too much more, I think it's very good and valid agricultural practice. That's what it is. He's not just taking in.
You're very familiar with it, and you're educated on it, and you know how it works and everything. I mean, I don't, it didn't seem from the last meeting that anyone did. They were kind of just.
He wrote an article in the last newsletter.
But the question
I
is,
encourage you,
yeah.
What's your name? I'm sorry.
Terry,
Terry, and I'm Terry.
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 Terry, Terry.
Got it. I just encourage you to go out there when you see, some people there who are working there, and ask them how it works. In particular, Richard is the guy who's mastermind and got all that going. And I encourage you to find him, hunt him down, talk to him.
Could we have Richard?
What's going on?
Yeah. Can
'Cause
we,
he does it, and he can tell you very clearly what he's doing.
Well, right now it just looks, it's very unsightly, and I've had a number of people that have come to my house say, what in the world is going on down there? It's a dump.
That's understandable. And I, that's very understandable, and I've asked Richard and Deb if they could possibly arrange a time where at the farm they can invite people from the township to come in and so that they can have a chance to present what the heck they're doing there.
Are tree cutters bringing their logs there, like people in the tree business, and it's just,
It's pre-dumping.
Anybody who wants to.
so.
There's trucks and trailers with no names on them. There's very well-known, arborists and tree cutters that are going in there. There's also people just pulling trailers with branches that are throwing stuff in there.
So who knows if they're a legit company that's made arrangements
Who
ahead of
knows
time?
what's gonna be in the bottom of that pile?
All right, I think we've taken a fair bit of time.
And it all drains downhill. It all, that slopes. So when it's raining like this,
to his question about monitoring, and can you clarify for us, Will and Barry, what is the role of this commission in terms of it? Remind us what our relationship is to the property and the owner, and what's our responsibility from a monitoring perspective, and what are you monitoring for? And do we have a responsibility, given a role here, to try to help make this educational thing happen sooner and maybe there'll be some more open discussion about it. But if you could clarify what is our role, what's the commission's role in this?
Yeah, Barry can clarify too, but basically, we have been responsible for the easement that is being altered. And it's supposed to be for legitimate agricultural purposes. So the question is this silviculture fit within that notion of legitimate agricultural purpose? And clearly, it's not necessarily an aesthetically pleasing agricultural purpose, if indeed that's what it is. But I mean, I'm not sure that we have the expertise to make a distinction what is and what is not legitimate agricultural purpose. But Barry, you've been out there and you do monitoring. What is your impression?
Several times and also recently. I did walk around the length of the longest pile that's just to the east of the barn. And I mean, I didn't crawl into it, but I looked as I went and didn't see any other debris other than a few, like plastic water bottles, which I picked up and took back, but there was maybe half a dozen of those. So to my view, there wasn't any other non-woody debris that was in the piles. So in that sense, it's not a landfill, it's not accumulating other material that wouldn't be appropriate. And this is probably my third conversation with Richard about it, and he insists that he's got a long-term plan and that it's a legitimate agricultural practice.
I mean, when does it go from agricultural to blight? Cause I know,
Exactly.
I know that our ordinance officer, Sean McCormick, was asked to look into this too. And when I was out there a couple of weeks ago, I said, those are some big piles. When I Googled mound culture or hugel culture, they were like maybe 8-10 feet when I was there. I don't know what they are now.
They're bigger now.
And they're from the articles that I read on it, they're like branches, like you put branches on the ground and you pile dirt. There's
And is it a
logs that
plan?
are
A
3 to
written
4 foot
plan?
in diameter out there. It's gonna take.
Like,
We should have Richard come to a meeting.
Or have,
We should ask this question.
or you coordinate with Sean McCormick, our ordinance officer, with respect to.
What does Sean say about it?
I don't know that Sean, well, I don't wanna speak for Sean, but Sean is in the position of, he's not an agricultural specialist. I don't, and that's why I take your point, Janine, about what is our role, and I don't bring expertise in
Well,
mound
the
culture.
role is that at least once a year, I visit every property in which we have a conservation easement and make sure that the agreement that we reached with the landowner, whether it's the original landowner or a new one, is being upheld. And the basic things that we are seeking to prevent on these properties is subdivision of the smaller parcels, construction of buildings, making it into a gravel pit, clear cutting woods, filling wetlands, and so forth. And we also allow certain things to happen on the property, agricultural use being one of
I
them.
mean, are they gonna be chipped, wood chipped and
No.
made into chips? So just like,
So
and you're gonna grow raspberries and strawberries on 20-foot
No.
wood piles?
No, it's eventually gonna break down. It might take 10 years.
It'll take way more
will
than
take-
it'll take our lifetime.
With the size of the file, it might take 20 years,
Look, they're more than that.
but it's clean material. He says it's for an agricultural use.
Can we say this as enough material until
No, I don't think we can.
we can't limit?
Yeah, but when do we call,
We can limit dumping on the property.
yeah, when do we call BS?
Well, how do we know if it's reached that point of dumping?
Inspect.
And dumping, I have to look at the language in that easement or any of our easements, but it is intended to be trash, if you will, that is, plastic and cans and stuff that, that you would put out at the curb to take to the landfill. And it's not that.
But what Terry is putting his finger on, that was what we discussed last time. If something were happening, if someone were out there moving those logs into hedgerow type things and covering them with those chips, we'd say, okay, well, that's interesting, let's wait and see what he's doing, but there's nothing happening. And I think he's my neighbor, so we both drive by a lot. So it is a continuing concern and Terry's hearing it from people. We've heard it from people too.
Yeah, yeah, I heard about it from other places too.
Yeah.
And so again, I would encourage you to invite Richard to come to it. Maybe we talked about this before. Let's have him come to a meeting.
But how does that help us? If we know
Well, I
what he
think
wants.
if this commission is going to be responsible for monitoring property that has agricultural purpose and practices going on, we need to be clear, we have somebody who is knowledgeable and can answer the question at some point about like the tension between good agricultural practices, which in general, the township wouldn't have responsibility for monitoring general citizens around that, right? But in this case, we do, so it does feel like we have some.
Let me suggest something. You're familiar and sympathetic to Richard for what he's done elsewhere, and I think confident that he's a person with good intentions. Wonder if you could go to him and explain that, there's a fair bit of, should we say, anxiety about what it looks like and find out from him where he's going in terms of the appearance of the property and see if he has plans to continue bringing things in, because at least we should be able to get a pause here to reflect on. Could you imagine having that conversation, Tim?
Yeah,
I've already done that.
think
I've already had.
Very
perhaps-
good.
Yeah,
The last time I went out to the property, I had that exact conversation with Richard.
Well, maybe he needs to hear it from more people,
but
Well, I know Barry
Maybe-
should be the
maybe-
one though. He's our monitor.
but he's a friend here.
maybe we invite him
Got a job.
to our next meeting.
I just don't see how that helps. We
He
know
can
what he wants to
explain.
do.
We all have questions about where he's going with it, how he's gonna do it. Why he's doing what he's doing, and I think it'd be great if he showed up and.
And he said he was willing to do that, and at this point, I think that would be valuable.
Well, let's just
Maybe
formally,
maybe a legitimate question to him would be, he's the expert, he's the one that's doing it, he's the expert. For what he wants to do on that piece of property, how many cubic yards of that does he need to accomplish that? And then there'll be a limit somewhere.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot out there right now.
Well, I'll tell you,
The answer is that no, there is no limit.
in any income.
Wait a minute.
No, I'm sure he has good intentions. There's no doubt that he has good intentions. I don't doubt that at all, but.
Not getting paid for, to have those, he's inviting it because he wants it, because he thinks it helps his agricultural use of the property.
I
But as a
understand,
good
we have a
citizen, he
suggestion.
might agree to some boundaries or some, right? I mean, I think,
Let's have him here.
Yeah.
And discuss it with him.
Yeah.
So, does it make sense that we indeed, I know you're doubtful and then you're doubtful, but
That will make a change, but.
he's offered to come and then we can really have it out with him in terms of what it is that we think should be going on and what he thinks is going on, and chance to share our perceptions of whether this is real agriculture or what is going on.
Could we ask him to come with a presentation in mind, not just,
He's offered to do that.
yeah, I don't wanna just have at it, I just,
No,
no,
he's willing to do that,
okay.
and we'll invite you to come as well.
Perfect. I'd love to be there.
and as many neighbors as possible. I mean, I think
Yeah,
we
I
want,
think-
we want
right.
to make this
We've got
educational
plenty of
and a
seats.
dialogue about.
And Terry, I appreciate your comment. I think we all, I know there are a lot of people that this is weird. And those are big piles.
And we love the preserved areas. I mean, that's, what my mother-in-law has 65 acres on South Church Road that we've planted 7,500 trees on it that we've turned back to nature. So we like it that way, so we like.
All right, let's put it to rest.
Thank
right
you.
now.
Thank you.
And you wanna invite him
Yeah,
to our next
did
meeting?
you say you've already invited him?
He's offered, right?
He and I had a conversation about it, and he offered to come and make a presentation.
Perfect.
But I
All
mean,
right.
if we want to have that, do that, I'll
That's
tell
our
him.
next meeting then, all right? Terry? Okay, good. All right, we have any more public commentary? Comments? Yes.
I have a brief one, just listening to this conversation. My name's Daryl Burkhardt, and I'm mainly here just because I'm interested in agricultural protection. But based on what I'm hearing, in a conservation easement, the term agricultural use is a legal term that clearly, at this point, has not been clearly defined. And you may or may not be able to address this existing situation because of the ambiguity of that term, but as a commission, you may, looking forward and future conservation easements, want to come up with a clear definition of what that means.
Well, we actually do have that in the easement. I'm trying to find that right now.
You have a definition of agricultural use in there? That would be your reference.
Correct. Which is what I've referenced before. And when this issue has come up to say, is this a violation of the easement or not? And my read of it is that it's not.
What does it say?
And the zoning officer.
There's blight, there's nuisance, there's a bunch of stuff. At some point, we're gonna ask Mariah and Jim Fink and maybe, or to weigh in potentially, or Basie or whatever, but we don't have to decide that right now. But we could.
All right, do you have that handy? You want to?
Under the heading of preserving agricultural uses. This is in the conservation easement for this. We have two easements. The language is essentially the same. This is the east easement. The provisions of this easement and associated exhibits will not be interpreted to restrict the types of agricultural operations that can function on the property so long as the agricultural operations are consistent with the long-term viability of the property and the purpose of the ALE, which is to maintain the land for agricultural uses, basically. No uses will be allowed that violate federal laws, including federal drug laws, or that decrease the easement's protection for the purpose of the easement. Allowed uses of the property include the specific uses in another section, and the following activities subject to the qualifications stated below. Number 2 of those, agricultural production. The production, processing, and marketing of agricultural crops and livestock are allowed, provided these activities are conducted in a manner consistent with the terms of the easement and the agricultural land easement plan. Agricultural use must conform with the Michigan Department of Ag generally accepted agricultural management practices.
GAMP,
That generally
that
accepted.
GAMPs.
It talks about field tile, removing stones from the field. That's what that section says. So it basically says, if my read is, if you're engaging in agricultural activities on the property, that's permitted. There's
This
also,
is not right now.
But is there a
It's
GAMP?
dumping stuff.
Is there a GAMP for mound culture?
no,
Right. And a part of that I hear is production. And are we,
it's,
is
you
there
know,
anything being produced?
it depends on your timeline. You know, I mean,
It's-
many farmers plant crops and harvest crops in the same year. That's one type of agriculture. Richard has a long-term vision.
The farm is a permaculture farm to begin with. The crops there are raspberries, nuts, and, long-term crops, strawberries. So it's a different kind of culture.
Well, this is also where Tim, the Sustainability Task Force, has been trying to elevate what we call more regenerative and ecologically oriented agricultural practices, and this is an example of, I think, something that falls into that category. But if those are outside of the bounds of what the state of Michigan, others consider to be agricultural practices, are we clear and about the inclusion of those kinds of practices in?
Yeah, and it's a newer type of practice for our region here, and I think it's valid. I mean, it's done in Europe quite a bit, and there are gardening efforts on a very small scale, which, you do plant on top of, John, and that's an idea, but these are long-term rows of woody material.
All right, the key provision in the restricted activities in the easement, waste and dumping, accumulation of or dumping of trash, refuse, sewage, junk, or toxic materials is not allowed on the property. Is this trash, refuse, sewage, junk, or toxic materials?
I think it depends on how you define refuse.
Well, it does, but,
All right, I think we're going round and round here. We're taking 40
I've got it
minutes.
also to invite Richard to come to the next meeting and make.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll put him on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Are there any other public comments? Anybody online that would like to comment? Can you hear me?
Nobody's hand raised.
All right. Thank you all for your comments. Let's have the reports of other commissions. Planning, anything happening in planning?
We're gonna be picking up, with, the continuation of a public hearing regarding the, relocation of Honey Creek as Stabler Road intersects with Park Road. As you recall, there was a plan maybe about a year ago that proposed shifting, Stabler Road, which goes north and south, at intersection, T intersection into Park Road. Had it proposed move eastward into the open space at Trailwinds. And it caught people by surprise, and the township certainly there, especially the people that had purchased parcels of property with big backyards and open space in the backyards. Because that's a tricky intersection that's regulated by Eagle with respect to Honey Creek. You just can't put a creek where you want to put a creek. You can't put a bridge or a culvert as long as you want to put one, because Eagle, DNR, they want creeks to be open for light. They, underground is bad. With respect to the road commission, it's a pretty narrow one-lane bridge right now. Right now, there are two bridges. There's a bridge or a culvert underneath Park, and there's a bridge underneath Stabler. And the road commission, hey, it's our road. If you want to go under there, you're only going to have one bridge. So where the bridge goes is a function of where the Eagle can say Honey Creek can go, and where the road commission says, what can happen with respect to a culvert. And the road has to be widened. And right now, I mean, you could drive along your car, look out and spit into the creek. Don't do it. But I'm saying it really abuts, it's right in there right away. So, and there's another plan that they're proposing, the developer, that would have it moved more towards the current iteration where it is now, but they still don't know if Eagle's going to approve it. It takes a long time for Eagle to approve their things, and they don't give you some sense ahead of time of whether they're gonna do it or not do it. You pay your money and you take your chances with respect to whether you're gonna get it. So that's what they're proposing. And since it's a public, planned unit development rather, this is regarded as a kind of a major amendment to it. So it has to kind of percolate up to the Board of Trustees through the Planning Commission. So there's the continuation of a public hearing that commenced on the night of Passover, and it was adjourned early so that we could hear from more folks. So they'll be up that on Tuesday. Monday. There's also
What does Eagle stand for?
Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. It used to be, once upon a time, it was DNR, then they became DEQ, and then they split off, and there's the DEQ and there's the Eagle, but it's what I would call the DNR back in my day, but it's Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy. So that'll be, and it still proposes to lose open space, but like about a half acre of open space will be lost because of this. And so that's what's gonna be considered on Monday. There'll be a public hearing, and then there'll be action by the Planning Commission. Then there's gonna be more discussion of the renewable energy ordinance, the solar ordinance and the battery ordinance, and so there's more discussion about that. And I think those are the main things. We'll probably hear from Jan about, there's been a committee with on the potential reimagining, revisioning the Jackson Road overlay district. And right now there's too many car dealerships and things are pretty far back and they're one story. And what's the best way for Jackson Road to look between Wagner and between Baker going to the future. Should there be density there? Should there be height there? Should there be housing there? You know, should you try to, you know, what like Pittsfield has done over by Oak Valley and Main Street where they've got, I'm not saying, I'm just saying, I'm not pushing anything,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying.
The messenger.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, what should Jackson Road look like into the future? It's where we have our sewer, it's where we have our water, it's where we have bus stops, it's where we have a lot of things. So given the infrastructure that's there, you know, how should it look? And there's a committee that's kind of looking into that. We'll hear from them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Parks, Pathways, Reserve, did you meet?
Yes, yesterday we met. There are 2 stewardship interns interviewing for summer jobs. There is no information available on the Parks Director position yet.
It's posted though, right?
It is posted, it's been posted, yeah. Township Hall Park discussions are continuing on how to, you know, deal with that park to make a little play space, et cetera, yes. The DDA is paying to have Dino Drive repaved. So there will be a temporary impact on that West Scioto Preserve trailhead. And we made 3 recommendations to the Board of Trustees. The first, that the board support the restoration of the old field meadow in Van Curler Preserve. The second, that the board add land acknowledgement signage at various parks and preserves throughout the township. And the third, a resolution in support of John Reiser's proposal for a pollinator pilot project, beehives placed on township land throughout the township.
Well, I don't know throughout. That might be an overstatement. Like,
Okay,
it might
here
be,
and there.
well, on parcels on which it would be appropriate.
Parcel,
It's
okay,
it's
there
a
you go.
pilot program and it might just be 1 parcel, 1 hive for 2024.
Yeah,
I mean, you
Just to see if it worked
Right, yeah.
out, just,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
here and there
Yeah.
throughout is a,
Pilot project is, yeah.
And what's the status of the land acknowledgement?
We just asked that the board consider doing
Consider,
that,
okay.
yes,
adding something to
And it's-
signage.
Yeah.
yes.
It's a future
great.
township signage,
Right.
like others,
Like
like
we've
other
done, yes.
government agencies and universities have done.
Right.
I saw something of a photograph of the Van Curler parking lot. What is that?
Oh, yes, so, those were from Roy, and I just forwarded those to you. That's the status as of now of the parking lot. They're going to pave the Van Curler apron right on Joy Road, and then beyond that it will not be paved.
Great.
Look good.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Board of Trustees, how are you doing?
We're doing well. Thank you. We meet on, Tuesday night. The agenda hasn't come out yet, but agenda items are going to include, there'll be a special meeting at 6 o'clock to discuss the acceptance of a state grant related to the acquisition of conservation easement that's under the consideration by this body. There's going to be a resolution, long overdue, to adopt a new fee schedule for development review. We, you know, developers review projects when they come in, and we probably have rates that were set when there was black and white TVs and VCRs. So I exaggerate, but they really need to be updated to be kept in line with the costs that have risen and what happens there. The board's going to consider a request from University Flower Shops on Wagner Road for a conditional use permit that would allow them. They're located generally in Nichols Arcade in Ann Arbor, but they have operations inside of township that would allow them to use 10% of their floor space to have some retail operations on Wagner Road there. I think that's all I have. The agenda is not officially out yet. Obviously, the consideration of a pilot project for pollinator is going to be there. One of the things that's going to come up, maybe tomorrow, I'm sorry, at the next meeting, maybe the future meeting, is there is a real pretty red barn located at the intersection of near the pile of wood. Help me out here. Wagner and Scioto Church, yeah. and, there's a volunteer group that has been maintaining it. And the issue is gonna become, what does maintenance mean? Because it needs a new roof. So does maintenance include the, putting the new roof on there? Or does maintenance mean, keeping the grounds clear and keeping the barn structurally sound generally and painted, things like that? So, they want the township to pay for a new roof for what is a township barn, but used by them on a volunteer basis. So that's gonna come up. I don't know that it's gonna come up on the 14th, but it's gonna come up, if not at that meeting, at the next one.
Is that township property?
Yes, small, carved out township parcel. Very
Less
small.
than an acre that was donated to the township by Dwayne Thomas and Judy Lobato many
It's
years ago.
not even an acre, right, Barry?
Well, less than.
Yeah. So,
So John, your special meeting on Tuesday, do you typically have a quorum at those meetings to be able to decide?
I'm hoping. Yeah, we need a we need a super majority to go into a closed session, so. I'm gonna find out. I'll be there at 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
It's important regarding acceptance of.
I'm aware. Yeah, I'll be there.
Okay.
So, thank you. I'll yield back.
All right, Sustainability Task Force, is there anything to report there?
Marty, do you have anything?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm kind of retreating slowly, as you can tell.
all right.
Marty and I both participate in the Sustainability Task Force, and I think you do too.
I do, when I can.
Okay, so, the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, which Janine has talked about, is still in submission. Progress is being made. Hopefully, by the end of the process, we will have an intern come for the summer next year to do some of the work that needs to be done by the task force, and it would be, probably mostly outside work. Related to that is the native plant workshop that is gonna be held at the fire station on the 1st. What day of the week is first? It's gotta be Saturday or Sunday, but it's from 12 to 2 p.m. I'm sorry, 10 to 2 p.m. 10 o'clock to 2 p.m. and it's to do a lot of planting.
At the fire station.
Put in a lot of,
Fire
Yep.
stations
Yep,
Yeah.
Saturday, June 1st.
right,
Yeah.
from 10 to,
And they're planting behind the station?
yeah, alongside of it and continuing along into the back of it. You may be more.
What are
Um,
we planting?
But it's a bunch of plantings, a bunch of steps that have got to go in.
And they're trying to go back to what was typically the native plants of the area.
Yeah.
Nice.
Are they also selling plants or just?
No, it's a workshop and there will be somebody there that will explain.
Yeah,
Native plantings, what are, why and what.
Mike Apple.
Like,
Mike Apple with Mike Apple Environmental Design. Will be there to
yeah, that's
help
great.
educate and,
I'm gonna plan to show up myself and any of you or any of commission members here would be welcome, of course. Another thing is the Sustainability Fair coming up in October is being planned out. And I've invited, by the way, Terry, I've invited the honeybee people to come and have a table there that demonstrates and shows what they're doing with the hugelkultur practices there. But also, there will be a lot of participation and tabling by different groups around the township and around the region. Sustainable practices in general.
Is there a date for that yet in October?
A date? Yep, there is a date and it is October 6th. From 12 to 4, it's gonna be under a tent in the Meyer parking lot. Meyer has given us space and it'll be good.
And you said that the native plant workshop is from 10 a.m. till when?
To noon.
To
And also, just to clarify on that, the same day, there is the Native Plant Expo and Marketplace at Washtenaw County
Farm ground.
Farm. Yes.
So I was just gonna say, the farm grounds is from 8 to 9 for the early bird, 9 to 1. And that's the farm grounds, and then planting, to answer your question. Prairie dropseed, butterfly milkweed, purple coneflower, penstemon, rudbeckia, coreopsis. That's what you'll be planting, so bring appropriate gloves.
The only other thing I'd add to what Tim shared is that on the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, as part of the review, we think we have hit the silver level as a township, which so bronze, silver, gold, which is actually quite remarkable
Yeah.
and something to be proud of. And I think with that, we will get some technical assistance, and it sounds like that's
Good.
maybe this in
Hopefully
corner.
so.
Yeah.
I just want to add that I do a fair amount of historical research just because I'm a geek. And our ecosystems in Scioto Township are so unique. And in one book, Past and Present of Washtenaw County, specifically about Honey Creek and what existed in that area, it says, Honey Creek in Scioto Township, a tributary to the Huron, was named from the honey found in such profusion near its bank by the early settlers. An old settler had said the plains for several miles up and down this stream on either side before they were disturbed by man were one vast flower bed during the summer season. And single trees were found in this locality by early settlers, from which were taken more than 300 pounds of honey. So it's inspiring to think from the bee pollinator to sustainability to the planting, that we can try to go back to this.
And I think that supports John's initiative for the.
I'll add one last thing that is happening with the Sustainability Task Force, and that is mapping of the tree canopy and the impervious surfaces. There's a member of the group, Norm
Roller, yeah,
Norm
Norm Roller.
who has done this all of his life. He's a professional at it. And so he's at work mapping our canopy, our tree canopy, so that we understand the relationship between that and impervious surfaces, and if we need more tree canopy and so on. So that'll be reported on later on. And Jan Culberson is doing an excellent job at leading that group.
Okay, thank you. Right, we have dealt with old business earlier. We have nothing in the way of new business. I think we're going to move on to the open session consultants report.
Which is pretty brief. I did ask for financial statements on Monday, did not receive them. I've still not received them. So I don't have anything to report there.
So that's Sandy didn't get them to you, or? who?
I requested Rebecca Moati. Right, and she's done that in the past.
Can we just make it standing, like at the same day of every month, she sends you, like the 25th of the previous month, she sends you
I can ask for that.
for the first.
I have been asking on the Monday before the meeting. And she's responded in the past, but she didn't this time.
She's out of the office this week
There
and
you
next
go.
week.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I didn't put into the report that I provided to you before the meeting here was that monitoring season is active. And I've been to a number of properties already. Still got a bunch more to do. And the one that I wanted to mention was the Renz property, which is now the Vestergaard property. Which, as you recall, had federal, state, county, township, and greenbelt funds contributing. And the fellow, a new staff person with the state program from the ag department, wanted to be able to see all of the properties to which they have contributed funds. So he came over last week one day. We went to 3 in Webster, 1 in Dexter, and then the Vestergaard property here. Had a chance to walk around, saw the cows. There's new fencing up on the property. If you haven't been by there, the house is gone, except for bits of the porch. And all the other structures that were there previously are also gone. It's all been regraded. So it looks substantially different from when we bought the easement on that property, and Mike indicated, he wasn't present for the monitoring visit, but he indicated previously that there's a Project Grow garden there on site. And he's intending to expand that this year. And they're talking about the agricultural educational facility that he wants to construct on that. So we had a conversation just a month or so ago. And they're still thinking about building a house out there, but the short-term focus is on this ag education building.
So he's doing a good job of following through on his commitment and his initial proposal.
Yeah.
And everything there looks impeccable.
It
when you
does.
drive- It's just impeccable.
Bill, if you haven't gone by, do, because it is just a gem. He's done wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything within the permissible footprint that you saw?
Yes. Yeah, he's very well aware of where the building envelope is located. Like one of the questions that came up a month ago, when I had a conversation with him and his son, and I think it was a planner who was working with him on this educational facility, was so that we identified a septic, we identified a location where a septic field could be installed as part of the purchase process. Money was put into escrow so that the field could actually be constructed. It had to be done within 6 months, I think it was, of closing on the sale of the property, and Mike accomplished that. It's in the northwest corner of the building envelope. And one of his questions was, can we expand that? And I said, yes, within the building envelope. Can't do it outside the building envelope. We're very clear in the easement on that any structures or facilities of any kind need to be within I think it's a 6-acre building envelope. So So he understands where the corners are and what he can do in there and what he cannot do outside of there.
That it?
That's all for the open
All right.
session report, very brief. We don't have anything under contract at this point, which typically we would discuss in open session. We will have things under contract in the near future, but don't at this time.
All right. So do you have anything regarding the summary of what you're going to talk about in closed session?
Yes, I do. So we have an update on the state grant award. That's pending, BOT approval, to have the supervisor execute that. Another update on a property, another update, a bunch of updates. Now we will have one potentially a set of recommendations for a conservation easement purchase and related due diligence for a property that we've been talking about for the last couple of months.
Eric, can you just explain what is due diligence?
For us, it
There's some
is-
people here and then we go into these closed sessions and we talk about due diligence, but what does that entail?
So there's several things that we call due diligence, which is ensuring that the property is in a acceptable condition at the time that we're purchasing the easement. So one of the things that we've already done on this property is obtaining a real estate appraisal of the development rights.
Survey?
So that's part of it. The recommendation that you folks could make on this property is for a boundary survey and also a phase 1 environmental site assessment.
What is that?
To determine, we hired a firm to come to the property and do a record search to see if there is any indication of there being hazardous materials on the property, either a spill on the property or adjacent to the property, or any record of anything happening on the property, some reports to the county or the state, so forth. We do a site visit, and in most cases, the producer report to say there are no recognized environmental conditions or RECs or RECs on the property, so it is clean from their perspective, which protects us then in case there's ever a lawsuit that's filed, if something got discovered sometime in the future, we can say, well, we had an ESA done, back in 2024, and it said there were no sign of that. We also do a title search and get a title commitment from a title company that shows us if there's any liens or encumbrances or clouds on the title that need to be addressed. The most common of those would be if somebody has a mortgage on the property. That mortgage would either have to be paid off at or before the closing. And if that's not the case, say somebody owes more money than we're paying them, or they don't want to pay it off, then we require the mortgage holder to subordinate their interest. So typically in a mortgage situation, you have title to the property, you have a mortgage in the chain of title. If the easement came in after the mortgage and the bank foreclosed on that, then the easement being lower in the chain of title would be dissolved. We don't want that to happen. And so we require that the mortgage holder subordinate its interest to the conservation easement. So it would, in the chain of title, go title, conservation easement, and then mortgage. So we get a title commitment to see if there's any liens or clouds or uncertainties about the title to the property. So appraisal, survey, environmental assessment, title commitment, and then all of our documents are reviewed by our attorney. The conservation easement, the purchase agreement, the title commitment, and so forth. And then blessed before we come to the Board of Trustees. So those are basically the 5 things that we do as our due diligence.
And Barry, that is all outlined in that process document you
Well, that
recently
is.
created, which
That's
is,
correct.
should be made publicly available.
I think it
for
is
folks to know.
on-
Okay, great.
So on the land preservation website, there's a link to that flow chart, and you will see exactly what Barry's saying.
But you got the verbal now too. So there's one property on which an environmental assessment and a survey, as well as the easement purchase price, could be recommended. And if you choose to do that, that recommendation, the vote on that will be done back in open session. So there's a good chance that will happen. And then we have a new application and we need to set up a time to visit that property. All right. So a bunch of updates, one action item and a new application.
So one action item, so we will have to go back into open session to vote on that action item.
If you so choose, yes, I think there's a good chance of that though.
All right, good, thank you. We have our next public comment session. Are there any?
Wait, next meeting, did you want to, we'll see if who's planning to
Okay.
be here in June.
All right, June 13th.
Yes, June 13th.
Anybody unable to make the June 13th meeting? Okay, looks like we're all gonna be, probably gonna be there.
I move out of town, on the 29th.
On the 29th of what?
June.
Oh, okay.
Well, we're gonna hope you'll be there.
Yeah,
June 13th.
yeah. So we
That's
can
way before the 29th.
honor your engagement with us
Yes.
in so many ways, Marty.
I come to the.
And you're the
going
reason
away
I'm
party.
here, I think, or one of the reasons.
The good or the bad.
Okay.
Right. All right, so we have the note that we're all likely to be here.
Yes.
Good.
I have a state bar from Michigan, meeting with the state bar on that Thursday.
It's somewhere else.
So what are you gonna choose?
Is that really more important
Good
than?
question.
That's an annual meeting. What I will do is I pledge, I will call in and listen via Zoom, not deliberate, but I will be here in spirit, but not as a voting member.
Okay. All right, now, once again, are there public comments? One last chance? No, that's okay. We'll then ask, I'm sorry, anybody over there?
No hands are raised.
All right, good. So, as per the language printed on the, agenda, would somebody like to move that we?
I move that we go into closed session for a discussion of pending property evaluations pursuant to section 15.268 gosh, I need my reading glasses. D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, specifically to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time and option to purchase or lease that real property is obtained.
We have a second.
Support?
Did you get a second?
No, not
I'll
yet.
second that.
All right,
Tim,
okay.
Okay.
Roll call.
yep, Janine,
Yes.
Marty,
Yes.
Lisa. Yes. Tim,
Yes.
John Reiser,
Yes, Roger's fine.
Will Weber,
Yes.
and Wiseman is yes.
All right, so we will then go into closed session. We thank you all for coming. Come again. Call us if you have other questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Open session with a motion.
Cameras, Chris.
You wanna make that motion?
So
No.
I will read this motion. It's a motion to recommend that the Scioto Township Board of Trustees approve the expenditure of funds out of Fund 233, the Open Space Land Preservation Fund, for an environmental site assessment survey and an easement purchase for $20,000 on property application number 2023-3.
So moved.
Okay, Janine
Now a second support from.
and Tim. And we can.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. No, I'm in support.
Okay. Now, I think that's all we have to do. We
Yeah,
have a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
So, support.
And Marty?
Mark, support.
So-
Motion.
So our motion includes the easement purchase then?
Yes.
This, yeah.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Boy, I was worried we weren't gonna make it.
I know.
Almost